Hey everyone, and welcome to your C# tutorial on reference type variables and value type variables. So to begin this lesson, let's just recap on our definition of what a variable is. So a variable is a space in memory that contains a value. Now, I think we all kind of understand this. We've been talking about variables like integer right, before. An integer may be named age equals 10. Okay, cool. So we know that this is a variable, and in memory it contains the value 10. So this is probably one of the easiest variables to understand, and this is actually a value type variable. And so a value type variable is a variable that contains an instance of the type. So the type of the variable age is integer. And inside, if you looked at the space in memory for age, you would find a 10, right? So now that's a little bit different than if we create our own object. So if we create our own object called person, and let's do that now. So if we create a person object and we call it person1, and we set it equal to a new person, then this is actually an example of a reference type variable. And so a reference type variable is a variable that contains a reference to an instance of its type, right? So in the case of a value type variable, we had a value in the memory location for the variable. In the memory location of person1, since it's a reference type variable, you're going to find a reference to person. So that means that it'll be in the memory location for person1, you will find the memory address for another memory space, right? So, and that memory space will contain our person. So an integer, if you try to print out, for example, age, right? We'll say age equals, and then we'll print out age. So if we run this, I think we all know what's going to happen. We should see age equals 10 when we run it. Oops, this opened in a different window. I'll pull it down. There it is. So we have age equals 10, hello world. And that makes sense, right? So, however, when we print out, I'm going to delete our hello world there, or I'm going to cut it, and I'll paste it here. And we will say person equals, and we'll type in person1. Let's run this again and see what happens. This keeps opening in the other window. So over here we have age equals 10 and person equals the name of our namespace and person, right? And this is indicating that inside of our age variable, we have the value or the instance of the type 10. Inside of our person variable, we actually just have a memory address to the instance. Now, what we can do is we can print out the member variables of person. Although we can't print out an entire person object itself because it's complex, we can take one of those member variables of person and print that out. And so as we know, when we create an object of a new class or an instance of a new class, then that instance gets all of the member variables of the class. So below person here, let's access one of our member variables. We'll say first name is equal to Pete. And so we do person1, first name. And so when we run this, we should see that we print out person equals Pete. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to close this terminal. So just to recap, a value type variable will return an instance of its type when we call it or when we access it, and a reference type variable will return a reference to its instance. Awesome. So that seems simple enough, but it gets a little bit more complicated when you start assigning these variables to different instances of the same type. So let's work with our age here. Let's create another integer called num, a number, we'll say, and we will set it equal to age. Then let's say that number equals 15, and we'll do a console.writeLine, and we will print out, we will say number equals number, and we will say, so I'm doing this a little bit weird, age equals age. Okay, so let's run this, and we see that we're assigning number to age and then changing the value of number, and then we print them both out. Okay, so here we see that age is equal to 10, which makes sense because we assign age to 10 here, and then we print it out here. Next, we take number and we say number is equal to age. So at this point in the code, number and age are both 10 because we take the value of age and we give it to the variable for number. And so since this is a value type, this age variable returns an instance of an integer and gives it to number. So number and age are both 10 here. In the next line, we take number and we give it a different value of 15. And so when we print it out, we see that number is 15 and age is 10. And that makes sense, right? So it gets a little bit weird if we do the same thing for our person class. So below our person class here, I'm going to create a new variable for person. Call this person. Actually, we'll just call this Tim. And we'll set it equal to our person1. And then we will say Tim.firstName is equal to Tim. And we'll do the same thing. We'll do console writeLine. And we will say Tim is equal to Tim.firstName. And then person is equal to person1.firstName. Okay. So we got an error here. So my issue here was that I had an equal sign here and not a plus. And also I have Tim here, but I'm going to set it, say Tim equals, so that we have a little bit of space. So now let's run this. It's a little early in the morning when I'm filming this. Okay, so here we see, if we skip over our previous stuff, we see that we create a person called person1, and we give that person the first name of Pete. Now remember, this contains a reference to an object. It doesn't contain the object. So when we print out person equals, and then person1 first name, we see it equals P. Now, next, we create another variable called Tim, but we give it the value of person1. Remember, person1 is not the instance of person. It is a reference to the instance. So when we give Tim the value of person1, we're giving him a new reference to this same instance. Remember, this new keyword creates the instance, and then this variable just gets a reference to this instance. So when we come down here, we're giving the Tim variable the value of person1, which is just a reference to the instance. So we have the instance, we have person1's reference, and then we have Tim's reference to the instance. So when Tim changes that instance, it changes the instance for both variables because they're both referring to the same object. So both person1 and Tim are both referring to the same instance of person. So when Tim changes it, then person1 also changes it. So you can see here that when Tim changed the first name of our instance, he changed the first name to Tim, but it also changed it for our person reference as well. Because remember, there are two references to the person variable, or to the person object. So how we solve this problem, so this is usually a problem, usually don't want programs to work this way. I'll close the terminal. Now we solve this problem is we create a new person instance. And so now if we run this, oh, we have another error. Oh, that's because I didn't. Sorry, guys. It is early in the morning when I'm filming this, so making some smaller errors here. Let's run it again. So now we see that Tim is equal to Tim and Pete is equal to Pete. And that makes sense now because we have two instances of the person class. So a shortcut for seeing if you have the right amount of instances for references is to compare your variables to this new keyword. If you have two variables here, you need two keyword news and two new persons. So if that wasn't confusing enough, there's one last thing that I'd like to talk about. And you might need to watch this video a couple times over to fully understand it, but the last thing I'd like to talk about here is the string variable. So if we have a simple string, such as, title, and we set it equal to the grapes of wrath. I don't know why the title popped in my head. I haven't read that book since high school, but so we have our string variable here. Now, a string looks and behaves like a value type. However, because of the nature of strings and how they can be any size and any length and be quite long, they are actually behind the scenes secretly a reference type. Now, they won't behave like person here. So a string will behave like a value type. So I thought it was worth pointing out, though, because in future videos, I might refer to strings as value types. And that's because I do have them mentally organized as a value type, but you should know that they are, in fact, reference types, and they just behave like value types. So this was your C# tutorial on reference types and value types. I hope you understand this, and if not, give this video another watch, and maybe work with this material a little bit, and I'm sure you'll get it in no time. Thanks.